News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. Now, we begin with Professor Mohammed Tijani Bande, former Nigerian ambassador to the United Nations and president of the United Nations General Assembly, who said that with 2/3 of Nigeria's population, 3/4 of the landmass, and 64% of northern votes in favor of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they have concerns that need urgent action. The president yesterday fought back the growing opposition from the northern part of the country as the 2027 elections approach, deploying over 60 top government officials, including ministers, heads of security agencies from the region, special advisors, heads of parastatals, among others, to address their grievances. The North has been unhappy with Tinubu since assuming office in May 2023 with massive support from the region. It is now flaunting its commanding landmass of the country, huge population and massive voting numbers to drive home its opposition to the president's re-election. Tinubu certainly realizes the importance of the North to his electoral fortune and is throwing everything in the fight to get the support of critical stakeholders from the region as the race for 2027 gathers momentum. While staying with politics, the former national chairman of the African Democratic Congress, Ralph Nwosu, has disclosed that he was offered 3 ministerial slots by people in government to decline the use of ADC as opposition coalition platform. The revelation emerged as National Executive Committee of the ADC formally handed over the party's leadership to former Senate President David Mark at a meeting where former Osun State Governor Ralph Arigbesola was also pronounced National Secretary of the party. Giving insights into how some government officials from the APC allegedly tried to stop the establishment of the coalition party, Nwosu confirmed that the party's NEC was monitored by 7 officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Speaking at the last NEC that officially handed over the affairs of ADC to the Mark-led executive, Nwosu said senior government officials promised him 3 ministerial slots by 2027 if he rejected the idea of using ADC as the coalition party. Nwosu stated that the party surged to over 3 million membership within the first 2 weeks of the announcement of the coalition. Now finally, to issues pertaining to tax. The Federal Inland Revenue Service has discontinued the issuance of tax exemption certificates to all categories of taxpayers, including pioneer status companies, non-governmental organizations, and free zone entities. In a public notice signed by its executive chairman, Zach Adedeji, the agency declared that no further tax exemption certificates would be issued, warning that previously granted certificates would remain valid only until their expiry dates, after which renewals would no longer be allowed. It also cautioned that any attempt to forge, alter, or misrepresent exemption status would attract stiff penalties as prescribed by law. Reaffirming its commitment to transparency, the agency urged all stakeholders to align with the revised rules and obligations. Adedeji had recently decried the difficulty in quantifying revenue losses from tax incentives, attributing it to poor coordination among government agencies and the absence of a unified monitoring framework. Well, it looks like the tax revolution is here to stay as the government tries to get in as much revenue as possible from all sectors.
Okay, yes. So that is also going to coincide with the new tax reforms, that have been signed into law that will kick in at the start of next year. And pretty much what they're saying is it will not be business as usual. A couple of tax exempt status they give for pioneer companies, NGOs and the likes, because a lot of them abuse these things. And when you check, you have to be able to put in some level of transparency to it. So what they say is now they will probably vet through and go through the process, and due applications will be made, and they have to go through the process again, not just that signature tax exempt certificate they give. As regards the ADC, yes, I'm not surprised if Ralph Nwosu says that people offer him political positions, ministerial positions. You always get that in politics. But it was a good thing that he rejected those positions in the interest of democracy, because what kills democracy quicker is the absence of viable opposition. And if for anything, I'm happy that the ADC has come on board to be able to provide that viable opposition. I mean, for the first time in a long while, we saw APC jittery. We saw them get on their feet. Minister Wike cannot go to any public function now without giving a jab at the ADC. And you know what that means? It is what you have on your mind you talk about every time. So it means that he's bothering him. it gives him a lot of sleepless nights and worries. So that's why anywhere he goes, be it the church, be it the mosque, be it the educational place, which I'm against going to church and talk politics, but he must go there and he must talk about the ADC. He must try to downgrade the ADC and say, oh, they're not a viable option and everything. For the first time, too, we are seeing government officials respond to the questions the ADC will ask. Now they're giving the government a challenge to be able to tell us how much loans have been taken over the years. So you see the government officials on the offensive. You see the likes of Sunday Diary, they're constantly responding. That's what we call an opposition. Formerly, it was just a couple of voices, maybe Atiku, a representative, or Peter Obi's tweets and everything. But now you have a cohesive force. And you've also seen that the PDP has also started to wake up. But the question is, people that hijack PDP still have a very strong lever over PDP. So whatever PDP does, even if they see power to the south, definitely there are still some people, pulling the puppet string at the back. And that's why it doesn't look as though they are going to be able to mount a very, very strong and viable opposition because of the hitherto decimation that has happened in that political party. This was the same party that was said before that will rule this country for the next 60 years. As regards the North, yes, 2/3, yes, the population spread. I think that should also be subject to census. Let's be able to count these things with empirical. When last did we have census in this country? 2006. I thought part of the things President Tinubu was going to do, President Buhari of blessed memory was supposed to have that census. I think they had even started, buying all the things they need to be able to get the process on the way. But he pushed it to President Tinubu. President Tinubu has not had census. It's not right for a country. You can't do economic planning without census. So as regards the postulation of the numbers out of the North in population, let's even have a census so we know where we are. If we don't have a census, it's not a good place to move forward. But as regards, yes, the North plays an integral role in our politics. They are jittery there. The government is jittery. That's why they are sending the likes of George Akume to go to the North and say, it's only right to give the South their turn. Then you'd seek power in 2031. But there are also discordant tunes in the North. They feel sidelined. You see, that's what happens when we try to play this politics of region. There is no how any region will ever say they are fairly treated. There is no how. Now is the North complaining. The other day, Rabi Musa Kwangaso was complaining that most projects are done in the South and everything. Omar has even told him to apologize because they showed him projects being done in the North. But when you look at it, it will be as if our man is not there, then it's nothing. So people will always complain. Every region at some point in this country. And that's why when they blame the Igbos so much for the civil war that, they actually want to leave. The question we should ask is, which region has not said they want to leave the unity of Nigeria? They want to leave this country. The Yoruba group has said that at some point. In fact, even recently, we had the like of Sunday Igboho shouting that. The North, the Northern Israel was the first to scream Araba in this country, that they wanted to leave. The Igbos in the civil war. So I keep looking, why are we now making it as if it's only the Igbos that have screamed that they want to leave? But most importantly, why all of these warring parts are screaming? It's because we've not had good leadership. Good leadership that you can see is equitable to all. And you see, ideally, good leadership should not be based on calculation of ethnicity or tribe or region. It should be based on a quality standard. But because politicians have bastardized the ecosystem, that's why we keep talking about region. So President Tinubu can all he wants, try as much as possible to appease the North and things like that. But you see, every region makes up their mind who they are going to vote for. It's not your appeasement that will work the wonders. It can change some minds. We remember the days of President Goodluck Jonathan. In the last days, he spent a lot of money into the North. He injected a lot of cash, but he didn't still make people vote for him. They still chose Buhari over him. All we just say is we need good leadership that can solve most of the problems in this country.
Okay, first, the event in Kaduna at the Sir Ahmadu Bello Memorial Foundation event assessing the midterm of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and, talking about government and civic engagement. It was at that occasion that we had this debate about the marginalization of the North. This day newspaper opened their report by quoting Professor Tijani Bande, former Vice Chancellor of the Uthman Danfodio University in Sokoto, former Nigeria's permanent representative to the United Nations. And it was he that made the point that there are urgent issues that need to be addressed, that the North constitutes 3/4 of land mass, 2/3 of the population, 64% of the votes in the last election, and that there are concerns being expressed by the North that must be addressed. What are those concerns? Those concerns have been addressed by former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babaji Lawal, Dr. Rabiu Kwankwanso, the presidential candidate of the NPP, Alhaji Dalhatu, the chairperson of the Arewa Consultative Forum, former governor, former minister, Nasir El-Rufai of Kaduna State, to the effect that the North is being marginalized, either economically or politically, despite the fact, according to them, that the North gave President Tinubu 5.6 million out of the 8 million plus votes that brought him to power. In other words, the North believes that it deserves more. The second part of the presentation at that forum had to do with the presentation by the current secretary to the government of the Federation, George Akume, who led the federal government delegation to that event. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, who all argued that indeed under this dispensation, the Tinubu administration, the administration has been doing a lot for the North. And then the governor of Kaduna State, Uba Sani, made a point that in fact, no other governor has benefited more than under the Tinubu administration, and that the Tinubu administration has been supportive of the North. So you have two issues on the table. Much of it, of course, is political, because when Akume was speaking, he was saying that in terms of the distribution of appointments, yes, the Southwest leads, but it's followed by the Northwest, the Northeast, the North Central, before you even go to the South-South and the Southeast. However, what is instructive here is that President Tinubu has now deployed officials of the state, 68 of them were told, to look at the grievances of the North and to see how further efforts can be made in the following years, to address those grievances. I think that in itself is an expression of good faith. But in any case, what we're reminded of is that in Nigerian politics, regionalism is still a major factor. Which region benefits more than the other? Which is why we will place in context the statement by Akume, the SGF, that, look, there is an agreement that every zone will do 8 years. After 8 years, let the next zone come to power. In 2031, he says it will be the zone of it will be the turn of the North, which is a problem about Nigeria. This continual attempt to balance interests, to rotate power, without the right emphasis on competence, ability, irrespective of religion, region, or ethnicity. But that is the reality of our country. One will have thought that rotational presidency, federal character, will have a sunset clause, but that is not the reality here. But President Tinubu or any other candidate has an obligation to carry everybody along. Because in any case, you can't win from only one region. You will need representation across the federation to be able to win. And to the extent that the present administration talks about integration, inclusion, it must continue to make the effort. Now, quickly, the other issue about Ralph Nwosu saying he was offered 3 ministerial slots if he could prevent the coalition, the opposition, from using the ADC as a platform. Well, I think the development that we have seen, the ADC handing over to the opposition, supporting the coalition party, is an interesting development. Because many Nigerians who have been imagining that Nigeria could become a one-party state, their fears have at least been assuaged. Whether they succeed or not, I think it's a good thing to have an opposition that challenges the sitting government. And that challenges it, not just on the basis of emotion or personal ambition, but providing alternative ideas. As I said yesterday, I would like to see a situation whereby the ADC becomes a platform, an alternative platform for ideas, as we see in the parliamentary system of government. But just to talk about personalities will not be enough. What the ADC did yesterday was to hand over formally to the leaders of the coalition, with Senator David Mark being confirmed as chairman, and Comrade Rauf Aregbesola being confirmed as substantive secretary of the party. So the game has taken a fresh dimension. And it also provided the opportunity to address the grievances within the ADC of persons like Dumebi Kachiku, who was saying that the coalition was formed by an illegal wing of the ADC. But as I said, having a viable, energetic opposition is useful, so that Nigeria does not become like Togo, where Yasingbe changed the constitution, does not become like Guinea-Bissau, where Embalo suspended the parliament, took over the judiciary, and wants to run in December. Does not become like Ivory Coast, where Alassane Ouattara says he will run for a fourth term because there is nobody who can run Ivory Coast, and that he is the only one in a country of millions of people that has the experience and the competence to determine the destiny of Côte d'Ivoire. We should not get into such delusions in Nigeria. That's why we need the opposition, but it should be quality opposition. Finally, on taxation. Now you recall that the Oyedele Committee came up with bills that were passed by the National Assembly. And we all said that tax reform, fiscal policy reform, was necessary to advance the objectives of government and to expand the revenue base and all of that and generate revenue for government. However, one of the proposals by the Oyedele Committee was to come up with a new tax credit scheme. What existed before then was a system under which a total of 105 entities, those who enjoyed pioneer status, initiative, free trade-free zones, and those who are NGOs, just enjoying waivers and concessions and benefits. Now, that was abused over the years. 105 companies running up to about 6 trillion naira owed the Nigerian government. Now, what Dr. Zacchaeus Adedeji, his name is instructively Zacchaeus. In the Bible, Zacchaeus is a tax collector. He says, based on the reform that has been done, there will be no more tax exemptions, and that anybody who wants to enjoy tax benefits should follow applicable laws. So, but what is important is that the new proposal by the Oyedele Committee about tax credit scheme, we have to see it through, so that some people don't benefit illegally, unjustly from the Nigerian state collecting rent at the expense of government revenue and the people. I think it's an idea that should be supported, and that the tax collector should refuse to be intimidated because some of the personalities involved who have been enjoying those tax waivers and tax benefits will fight back, and they will want to insist that they should continue to remain government's children and living on rent.
Let me begin with politics today, with the conversations coming from the northern region of the country, the northern part of the country, to attempt to address what one group is calling marginalization, and another group is saying, specifically the government is saying, well, efforts are being made and strides are being made. You had, for example, the governor of Gombe State saying that the Northeast has not felt the impact of the superhighways, that they want to see federal presence. And this is a conversation that has been going on for a number of days now in this current context. However, historically, if you look at Nigeria pre-independence, this was one of the hottest issues. 1953, a number of MPs walked out of parliament because of issues pertaining to independence. When Enahoro proposed, the context of an independent Nigeria, and the Northerners walked out because they felt that some of the context would marginalize them. And then you fast forward to, there's so many instances, one cannot look at all of them, but just to select a few, you look at some of the tension as well that came post-Civil War. There were also conversations around how the North felt marginalized by the no victor, no vanquished scheme that came up after that, and they felt that that was unfair to the North. You look at the time of the oil derivation. So there are so many instances in history, even regarding insecurity, when the North felt that they were not getting enough attention with regards to the rise of insurgency and insecurity. So many instances where you see that the North has called out and felt that they are being marginalized by whoever the power be at that point in time. I raise this to raise a point that roadshows are not the solution. That we can have all of these meetings of elites reeling out all of the lists of so-called achievements and so forth, but there's clearly a deeper fundamental issue that over the years, many of the speakers referred to 20 years, but it goes back beyond those 20 years. There's a consistent fundamental issue that it continues to exist in the reality of the northern region of the country that is not being addressed. Now, many may have felt that, rotating the presidency could have been a band-aid to that, but it's proving that even that is not a solution. So what is the way forward? Like I said, I don't think a roadshow is the way to address it, because this is a political solution, but these are developmental issues that we're facing here. It's one thing for politicians to come and list all of the achievements and all of the things that are being done, but this is the time that we would have wanted to hear from the people. Let the people come out and say that, yes, we are the people from such and such place in northern Nigeria, and we feel that this is how this administration is benefiting us. That's really how we will get a genuine assessment of what's really happening on the ground. Yes, there's a clamor for infrastructural projects and so forth because some leaders in the north feel that there should be more emphasis there. However, as important as these superhighways are and so forth, we ask ourselves, are these really the urgent fundamental needs of that region at this point in time? We know that education is an urgent priority. Well, some might argue that that falls under the subnationals. And that was the call by Governor Ubasani, where he said that as governors, how much are we really doing for our people before we come out and complain? Now, of course, one of the major issues is the issue of security. The NSA came out and said that, well, the instances of insecurity have reduced drastically and so forth. However, the headlines in the newspapers seem to conflict with that. And the general sense that we hear from people is that this situation as it pertains to security is not yet uhuru. Then, of course, economic stimulation. Now, there's talk of reviving Kaduna textile, which is a positive development, but it can't be knee-jerk reactions. There needs to be a plan. And some might say that, oh, these problems existed before the president. But when the president campaigned to be the president of Nigeria, surely he knew that these legacy problems, these age-old problems in the north existed, and there should have been a plan. So we shouldn't be in a place where we're now doing knee-jerk reactions because of the politics of the day. Lastly, on this issue, it's a little bit disappointing where optics are concerned to see that the elites and the politicians and office holders are gathering for such a roadshow at a time where the focus needs to be on governance. And we want to see more of people in their offices reporting back and executing on the duties that we still require of them outside of any political campaign. Yes, there are pressures. Just the other day, the ANPP was also saying that, if there's any threat to Kashim Shettima as a vice presidential running mate, that they too are going to pull out of the APC. There's a lot going on. However, politics is not our priority right now. Governance is our priority. Having said that, it's good to see the ADC, an opposition coalition, show us an example of what an organized opposition can look like. I hope they're able to continue on this journey of internal democracy that we are seeing play out. Some might say that not all issues have been addressed. Some are saying that, okay, these are a group of recycled politicians and we're yet to hear what they actually have to offer. What's their value proposition besides being opposition? Well, it looks like they're getting their house in order, and I think I would call for them to move a little bit faster. Because people are itching to hear what it is they have to offer, and it's important for us to hear what they stand for beyond being opposition.